Good evening, farmers, and welcome to another edition of the Harvest Season, where we update you on all the latest news and coverage of all things cottagecore. My name is Kevin Lonelyman, and with me is no one else. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Harvest Season. I'm Kevin, and I'm flying this one solo today. Unfortunately, we had just one of those events where schedules got kind of crazy, and Cody, unfortunately, who was going to be with me, ended up feeling not very well today. So, unfortunately, I am just piloting this one without her as of right now. So, welcome to the Harvest Season. As usual, we've got our links, show notes, transcripts, all that good stuff on the website. Strap in, because today we are, I think this is a first for us, so we're going to do a response episode to a YouTube video. I mean, really, all our episodes are responses, aren't they? But you know how the YouTube fare goes. You got the clickbaity title and the clickbaity thumbnail, and that's what we're doing. So specifically, there was a video recently posted by what was his name? Salamence. Yes. 3 weeks ago, and in this video, which is entitled "Why Are Farming Games Called Stardew Valley quote-unquote Rip-Offs?" He coins a new term called Neighbourvania, and it's about a 15-minute video, not terribly long. So I invite you guys to check it out, to get context for this discussion. But we'll get to that later. Before that, as usual, we have various news and updates and things to introduce or to bring out and discuss. But before that, even, I guess I'll chatter a bit here as to what I've been up to. So let's see here. First of all, I guess I've been continuing my little art challenge of September in October, whatever you want to call it. It's a pixel art challenge. And I've been making a sprite or so every day. The theme is monster making, as in Pokemon monster making. So making my little fake mon decks, which has been fun. Video game wise and whatnot, I've been playing the usuals, but a lot of exciting things have been going on, I think. So, for instance, Marvel Snap has introduced the high voltage mode recently, which has been a fun update. So, for people who don't know, Marvel Snap is the games are very fast paced. It's only 6 turns, 12 card deck. Every turn you get 1 energy, 2 energy, 3 energy, so on and so forth. And you're playing your cards to get as many points as you can on 3 locations. So yeah, they're generally pretty quick games, 5 minutes or so, I'd say, but they upped that up even more in the high voltage mode that was added. So this one cuts the game in half into 3 turns, but to compensate for that, instead of 1 more additional energy per turn, you are given a variable amount of energy per turn. And you draw 2 cards instead of 1, so you actually will see the same amount of cards as you would in a regular game. It's a very entertaining mode, in my opinion, because it turns a fast-paced game into even quicker. And the nature of the deck building and all that stuff changes. So I personally have been having a lot of fun of it. I always enjoy attempts at new modes and putting new spins on the game. Not always successful, but I think this one is pretty solid. So that's Marvel Snap. Good stuff. Aside from that, I've been playing Pokemon Unite as per normal. In particular, Darkrai has come out because, Halloween, spooky season, so we're getting our spooky Pokemon. He is a speedster who runs around and puts Pokemon to sleep and attacking them and so on, as expected. But perhaps more excited I am than by Darkrai is a lot of rumors and leaks supposedly have been dropping. I'm looking forward to them. If you don't want to hear about it, close your cover your ears for a minute or so. But in particular, there's 3 names that are dropped. Psyduck is supposedly coming, which will be a supporter that will likely sort of confuse and disable opponents. Very much looking forward to that, with all the funny animations I'm sure will come with that. It looks like Tinkaton from Scarlet and Violet will be dropping, which I'm very excited about and has felt long overdue. There was a mode in Unite called Panic Parade, which is a sort of tower defense mode, where you protect a Tinkaton, actually, who does have its own abilities and animations, so it really felt like there was a skeleton there already for a Pokemon to be added in-game, and so hopefully that is very much the case. And lastly, we are supposedly getting Galarian Rapidash, the magical unicorn variant of everyone's favorite fire horse from Kanto. I'm a big fan of Galarian Rapidash. I like when Pokemon evolve and they get angry, which, Galarian Rapidash always has a very angry expression on it. Again, all these are rumors and leaks, so, take it with a grain of salt. But if they are true, I'm very much looking forward to them. So that's Pokemon Unite. That's great. And then lastly, Zenless Zone Zero. I continue to, grind through it daily and enjoy my time with it. Just this week we had a new character added, Bernice. She is from the Sons of Caledon faction, a biker gang. And she's quite a lot of fun in terms of gameplay and as a character. She is a quote-unquote fuel expert, which is a sort of a reference to both her expertise as a mechanic and working with cars and motorbikes and whatnot. But also she is a expert in fuel for humans, as she is a bartender and likes to mix drinks and whatnot. She's very bubbly, very positive, and but gameplay-wise, she packs 2 flamethrowers, quite a contrast to her super bubbly and cheery personality. She's lighting stuff on fire. It is a lot of fun. And I think best of all with her release is actually just a piece of promotional material. So as you can imagine, they drop character trailers and character demos for showcasing their gameplay and whatnot. But for Bernice, they did a little different. The video entitled Bernice gameplay demo is actually just a music video showing off some rather a banger of a tune for Bernice and quite a amusing and entertaining animated music video. I highly encourage people to look it up just to hear the banger and then get a kick out of the character, because it is a lot of fun. So yeah, that's roughly what I've been up to lately. And so with that, I think we can move on over to the news. So let's see here. As usual, we have a handful of updates. First off, we're going to start off with Petite Island, which will be releasing on November 14th on Steam. Very exciting. So Petite Island is I would call it something but somewhere between Animal Crossing and maybe a short hike. It's a full 3D cel-shaded, very cutesy sort of game. You play as a little anthropomorphic cat named Lily, right on an island inhabited by very Animal Crossing-esque animal villagers. You can run around, go fishing, take photographs, ride on animals and explore the island, so on and so forth. They dropped a trailer for that on their Steam page. And yeah, it has a lot of those hallmarks. One thing I find particularly, I think, charming. Despite the characters all being animals themselves, there are still animals that you can ride on and interact with. But they're differentiated by being more or less designed to look like fruits and other food items. For instance, there's a llama you can ride on, but there is one that looks like a llama popping out of a strawberry or a llama popping out of a banana peel. There are cows that I think are colored to look more or less like potatoes. I think that's what they're going for, or different fruits. I think that's maybe more like a mango or apple color. And then on the cover art, there is a turtle that has a watermelon shell with a red skin tone. A very cute and clever way, I think, to still be able to use those animals that aren't anthropomorphized and whatnot. So again, that's dropping in less than a month on November 14th this year on Steam. And you can go check it out. The Steam page is up with all that trailer and other information. Next up, we have an update for a game that you all know that I'm very fond of, Mika and the Witch's Mountain. Our first content update will be dropping on October 28th, less than a week after the release of this episode. There apparently will be 2 new minigames, something involving churros and one involving kitties, a crow of some kind, and more achievements for in-game. Unfortunately, the post is on the Kickstarter website and backers only. As I am not a backer, I cannot see the full details, but I am just going off Al's notes here. As you can listen to the episode, I very big fan of Mika, so any new content will be welcomed, because I think that's maybe the only big shortcoming it had, just that it could have used a little more to pad it out, and I'm confident that this will be enjoyable. So keep your eyes peeled and keep a lookout for any updates that we might bring to that. And again, that it will be on October 28th. Next up on updates, unfortunately, we don't have Cody, who will be here to bemoan this one with me. Traveler's Rest, the in-keeping Stardew Valley-esque simulator, will be has added an update for quote-unquote beekeeping and irrigation. So there you go. I'm sure Cody's already having a reaction. It's fairly straightforward. The beekeeping, as done in so many other games, like Graveyard Keeper, which I think is so very comparable to Traveler's Rest, both in terms of its gameplay and its aesthetic. But yeah, you can raise bees and hives, collect wax for candles, honey for foods, so on and so forth. And irrigation for crops, which is somewhat shocking, as I would have expected there already to be some sort of, automated sprinkler system. Seems like a staple / no-brainer for anything with a, significant farming system, but better late than ever, I guess. But yeah, again, that is out now. Go check it out. And let's see here. Speaking of things that are out now, Lightyear Frontier, the mecha farming game, quote unquote, has released a small content update. The Mecha Lantern, as they call it, a free skin for the mecha to be, Halloween spooky themed. It looks something like a jack-o'-lantern. I actually am quite fond of the design they went with. As I haven't kept up with the development, so I don't know how much they've been improving on mechanically or gameplay wise on the mecha, but the design, the visuals of it, I think are very solid overall, and this is a very fun look on it. And also cool idea just to have these sort of skins for the mecha in general. If anyone's playing that, I think that's definitely a nice touch. So yeah, that is out, as I said, out already. So you can see the Steam page. As this game is on early access, they also have an FAQ for some other content updates and stuff that people have had. So you can check that out. Here's hoping that when they do hit 1.0, if they do, that it'll look quite nice and and hopefully, it'll be a big upgrade from when we first saw it. I'm definitely keeping my eye out for it. Looking forward to it. Let's see here. Next up, we have an update from Fields of Mystia, the very Stardew Valley-esque game, also inspired by what feels like 90s sort of anime aesthetic. The big update, the big news, is that the game is now available in early access, which is indeed a big one. I'm sorry. The game has already been out in early access. I'm misreading an older blog post. Good for me. I apologize. The first major update for this early access is dropping on November 18th. Tentatively, at least that's their date. And that update will be including basically a little more of everything. They're adding a little more to all the different segments in the game. For instance, villagers and romanceables will have new heart events and such. You can can go from 4 to 6 hearts, as in their social links or what have you. There will be new enemies and drops from enemies in the dungeon. So look forward to that. There will be all skill caps and skill perks. I'm not sure what that means. There will be the town renown cap will be raised by 20 levels, which I presume is the sort of community center-esque objectives, which includes rewards for museums and new board quests and things like that, and of course there's additional home upgrades and cosmetics and so on and so forth. A lot of like I said, a little bit of everything being added. Again, that will be dropping tentatively on November 18th. They also dropped the some other items that they're working on and sort of future roadmap updates. No tentative dates on those as of right now. But you can go on the website and check out all those details if you are curious. I think that's roughly covers all the news. And it is rather fitting that Fields of Mystia was our last news item, because I think that serves as a great jumping off point to the topic at hand, the Stardew Valley ripoff video or what have you. As this YouTuber Salmons, is that correct? Salmons? Yeah, Salmons, not Salamence. Salmons, not the Pokemon, legally distinct. They created the video because apparently they had been covering Fields of Mystia, and they'd been getting a lot of, I think, comments and feedback, and comparing it to a Stardew Valley ripoff. And so it's a 15-minute video, not terribly long. I encourage you guys to maybe watch it to get some context for the discussion here. And I watched myself, wrote down a few notes, and it is just one person making their own thoughts and whatnot, right? So this isn't like a it's not a dialogue between people or discussion or whatever, right, to get other opinions or perspectives. So I'm trying to be mindful of that, and here I am, doing the same thing, just my own thoughts on this. But I had a lot of issue with the video itself, or not as in like the production or whatever, but what the points he's raising in the video. So one of the first issues I already have off the bat is how he sort of sets the context for how he wants to frame the discussion. And there's two big points. First off, this YouTuber seems to say that because there's so many of these Stardew Valley clones, ripoffs, whatever you want to call it, the term Stardew Valley killer, that replacing it or whatnot, and he's contesting this concept as a whole, because in essence he says that it's not, say, some sort of online multiplayer game that can die if it's not played or whatever, and that there's room for all of these different games. And I mean, in a sort of objective sense, yes, that's technically correct, but at the same time, like, no one has even us on this show who covers these games, we don't have the attention, energy, so on and so forth, to give all these games the time and energy. The bigger ones, the better ones will, I think, and rightfully so, get the lion's share of limelight and attention, much like Stardew Valley did, right? That is why it is Stardew Valley is a bar that influenced this whole genre and whatnot. And so to kind of, I think that, yeah, there is still a limit to the time and energy people have, and so it will end up in comparison to Stardew Valley because of that. So yeah, like, I don't think that, I don't agree with that whole sentiment, like there's room for all of these games and whatnot. Like, obviously, yes, they can all exist, but they are entering an arena, in my opinion. And speaking of which, already I think one of the biggest red flags of the video is up front. He mentions that he's not bringing up Harvest Moon as part of this discussion, as in the original Harvest Moon. It's more or less highlighting how it's been, like, some 20 years or so between the original Harvest Moon and the Stardew Valley's release, and so, like, he just doesn't even feel like it's part of the discussion, which I think is just absolutely bonkers, because Stardew Valley, and he does, acknowledge on the video that it was inspired by Harvest Moon, but it's not just more than that. Like, it's one-to-one direct, and it's not like those games have gone anywhere. Story of Seasons or the Harvest Moon brand, whatever you want to call it, are both very much alive and well, and they set the tone, right? They set the standards that Stardew hopped off. Stardew Valley, saying Stardew Valley is the standard, the bar, whatever, like, without acknowledging that all that is in Harvest Moon and comes from Harvest Moon, I think, is ridiculous, right? In fact, I think it's helpful to consider, like, if we compared it to Harvest Moon, sort of the originator of all these, like, why Stardew is successful and maintains to be successful. I think that's a useful lens to view things here, like, seeing that comparison and seeing how these other games that have come out, comparing it to Stardew or Harvest Moon original, like, I think sets a very good, it illustrates how well they do, or how close they appear to Stardew or whatnot. So yeah, it's most unfortunate that this video doesn't address that at all. It just kind of completely brushes it off to the side. And so early on, one of the core points he's making is that the genre talk, good old genre talk, right? Like, he doesn't want to use the term farming games because, as he points out, other games have farming, like Animal Crossing, Minecraft, so on and so forth. And we've talked at length about this subject, right? Like, right, that's why we switched to the whole cottage core to kind of fine-tune that. And he's trying to fine-tune that a term better to suit this genre, what he's trying to discuss. And he comes up with the term Neighbourvania, which is in just I'm not a fan of this term at all. It is I mean, first of all, the name, I think the the term Neighbourvania. Jeez, did I actually say Metroidvania? Neighbourvania is a term he comes up with, and I think that just sounds awful just to begin with, just like as a term, like. But the way he's defining it, I don't like it either. Right, because so. There's the two portions of it. The neighbor portion of it, he is arguing that so many of these games tie back to the town and the neighbors, and I contest that to some degree. Like, clearly it is a huge portion of the experience in the game, but it is very possible to play Stardew Valley and Harvest Moon without that, right? Stardew Valley specifically, right, gives you the freedom to not have to interact with anyone whatsoever. My brother Calvin actually is very much like this. So when he plays any farming game, he generally gives almost no attention to social interactions and relationships with neighbors until maybe he's felt satisfied with his farm and whatnot, right? I think the farming aspect of it is still very much front and center because, right, like, if you look at, say, Animal Crossing, which is clearly not Stardew or farming or whatever, right? Like, that's very much focused. That's much more focused on the town and neighbors, more so than Stardew or Harvest Moon, I would say. But it is also still a very large part of it, so I can kind of see the argument there, right? But the Vania part, I mean, one, like I said, I think it just sounds stupid, but he contends that the traditional Metroidvanias are maze-like, to paraphrase them, they're maze-like games with sort of non-linear progression and whatnot, which he compares to Stardew, which is, you play at your own pace however you want, so it's non-linear in that sort of way with different avenues and mechanics you can explore and whatnot. And, well, I mean, first of all, I think that's a misunderstanding of the Metroidvania genre, because I would contest that they are very... not 100% linear, but very much more linear focused than, say, Stardew Valley or whatever, right? Like, there is a large map that that is all generated at once, so they have to explore, but the way that upgrades drop and whatnot, the progression is somewhat linear, at least bottlenecked or designed in a way to guide you in certain ways. It's not just a go out and explore the whole thing. I contest, like, that doesn't suit this naming scheme at all. So yeah, like the big 2 thumbs down for this term, Neighbourvania. Both as just how it sounds and for, like, how he defines it. And it's funny because in the video, like, I feel like he's trying to define this new term, but kind of muddies it immediately, right? Because, like, he just kind of includes Animal Crossing in there, but, like, Animal Crossing without the farming, or because it has farming in the very most bare sense, kind of fits in there, because he's saying that there's these different sorts of core pillars, farming, mining, interacting with neighbors, and these games and this quote-unquote genre have them to various degrees and whatnot. Like, I mean, yes, that's true in this genre he's trying to define, but doing it so to that much of an extreme almost feels like it's muddying this definition he's trying to create, and it all, I don't know, it makes it not... Again, I don't understand how he's trying to coin this when he's, kind of generalizing so much. And again, genre talk, as always, always hard to do that to begin with, but it just, the way he presenting it, like, I don't know, he's kind of shooting himself in the foot, it feels like. But to get to the other focus of the video, right, the idea of a Stardew quote-unquote ripoff, like, I have a very fundamental, I think, disagreement on how what he's defining as a ripoff, right? Right, like, I don't know if there's a hard definition of the word ripoff or whatnot. I'm not going to try to define it, but at least in the context of this conversation, he one of the weird things to me is that he claims that AAA games that are farming focused are bigger ripoffs than smaller indie games of Stardew Valley, right? And he's using other ones like big ones like Fae Farm. I think that was on the list of examples. He used Harvestella was prominent in the in what he the examples he used. Rune Factory, so on and so forth, which I think is absolutely ridiculous to call that, say, Harvestella is a bigger Stardew ripoff than, say, Fields of Mystia, right? Because Harvestella is, I think, so fundamentally different in so many mechanics and whatnot, right? To compare to, or so many aspects, not just mechanics, right? Like the presentation of it alone, right? It's so much farther and disparate than say Fields of Mystia compared to Stardew. I think it's kind of ridiculous to say that it's more of a ripoff than Fields of Mystia. And his argument is quote unquote intent, right? That big AAA companies are trying to cash in on the farming game hype and creating a Stardew ripoff. Well, and again, like, this is why I think it was kind of ridiculous to not include Harvest Moon, because I don't think Square Enix created Harvestella to rip off Stardew Valley. I think they were just creating their own entry in this genre that was established and existed well before Stardew Valley, thanks to Harvest Moon, Story of Seasons. He includes some of the later Harvest Moons as Stardew ripoffs, which again I think is like, obviously, yes, they're influenced by Stardew Valley, but they're also influenced by the series they took the name from. So it is wild to me that that's kind of how he's arguing that that's what defines a ripoff, right? And like, I mean, me personally, like this is a very almost sort of muddy topic to get into, because some of it is very subjective, right? Like, how much is influence versus ripoff, and so on and so forth, right? Like, that's a nebulous question that isn't easy to answer or whatever, right? If I were to use one that I know well, let's say, look at Roots of Pacha. I call it a Stardew ripoff, just for the shorthand and just for almost a comedic tone, right? Because clearly they are not trying to create some sort of quick shovelware ripoff of Stardew Valley, which in the video, he discusses there are games that very much do that. Not necessarily in this genre, but absolutely, right? There were Flappy Bird ripoffs, right? Or Vampire Killers, lots of clones and whatnot, right? There's many of them short mobile games, quick and dirty, done just to kind of trying to cash in. Like, yes, there's intent is part of it in what defines a quote unquote ripoff, absolutely, but like, at the same time, like, there's no denying that, say, Roots of Pacha has a lot of direct inspiration from Stardew Valley, right? One of the items he discussed in the video is the UI, the toolbar that Stardew Valley uses, and how many other games use it. And like, that I think is an excellent example of ripping off, right? Like, there are, and he discussed it in the video too, there are other ways to present it, the stylization, right, the appearance and whatnot. But there are many games that are very, very much directly, or very one-to-one, look like a Stardew UI, the way the tools and toolbar and such are organized. And again, not that these devs are trying to necessarily, but like, they see it works, and the framework is there, the blueprint's there, so they can go off it pretty easy and whatnot. But that's just it, right? Like, if you're sticking that close to the blueprint, it's hard for me not to say that it's very much a Stardew clone or a ripoff or whatever, right? So that's I just his whole argument on this aspect of what makes the ripoff or whatnot is I think just absolutely wild and missing some key fundamental discussion points. But again, first of all, like, the ripoff has such a bad connotation to it and rightfully so, because that exists in other products and games and whatnot, right? Again, just trying to cheap fake knockoffs of other items and whatnot that absolutely exists. And that's not necessarily a bad thing in this, at least in the context of these games here, because Stardew Valley is a very quality game, and there are a lot of people who use a lot of these direct influences from Stardew Valley, like Roots of Pacha, but those are, again, that's a very solid blueprint, very strong foundation, and so, it's sensible to base a game off that. Right, and going from that, though, like, there are devs who put more effort into other aspects of it, right? Like, Roots of Pacha changes the whole setting of it. Wildflowers goes 3D, and then that's the whole magic component, right? We have Coral Island with their emphasis on the underwater world and all this, and the different art style, right? A lot of these games are brilliant in their own way, and they definitely establish themselves and whatnot. And so that's why it's fine. Like, even if I were to say call it a Stardew clone or a Stardew ripoff, that's not necessarily a bad thing in my opinion, right? And I think it's clear to see when there isn't a lot of effort or thought into it, that is clearly just trying to cash into something, right? And so many of these games are not, right? We talk about it at length on the show of the kind of a issue that Stardew has set this tone, and so many other games have kind of ride this wave or entered this space, and they're so similar in feeling and whatnot. It's more just it's more almost a comment just on how difficult it is because of how saturated this space is with these games that feel so similar in their aesthetic or how they're linked to Stardew Valley, right? Stardew Valley and Harvest, or like Story of Seasons, they're the kind of the titans in the room, and everything's going to get compared to them. They're just inevitable. Like I said before, I don't think you can just not acknowledge that, contrary to kind of what was said in this video. I think the other big clear example that is always easy to see is Pokemon, right? Any monster catching game is going to get compared to Pokemon, right? Like Pokemon just dominates and define that space, right? And even like I enjoy so many of them. Like there's Nexomon, Cassette Beast, there's Digimon games, all which can be very, very different Pokemon. Even Power World, there's the whole Greenhouse episode if you want to listen to my thoughts on that. Like they all exist in the space, and they're gonna get compared to Pokemon. Temtem's another good one, right, where sometimes they are very close, or like Cassette Beasts, maybe they're not close at all, but they're still gonna end up getting compared because Pokemon just is too big, and it exists. It's just the nature of our limited time and energy, and we can put into these things, and so it is a helpful way to discuss these genres and games by comparing them. But yeah, so yeah, those are just some general talking points off of the video, right? Like I'm just going off some notes I wrote here. Right? Like I wish I had somebody else here to kind of go in depth, but maybe we can get another stab at this topic and get some other voices on the topic. But these are just some notes I have off here. One of the other questions that we were considering, or that Al asked us too, was like, is there a better name for this quote unquote Neighbourvania game, right? Or Stardew clone, Stardew ripoff, whatever you want to call it, right? Is there a better term for it or something to define it, right? And it's tough because, like, obviously we have cottagecore, and I think that's a great first step. Like, that's why we switched to this, right? Like, I think of the Story of Seasons Sudoku game I play, not Sudoku, Picross game, excuse me, that I still play because I like Picross that much. Like, that's a quote-unquote cottagecore game, even though it's just Picross, but because it has the aesthetic and the music and the vibes and all that, right? Like, I'd still put it in the cottagecore label, right? But is there a better, even, more niche term that we could use for these games that feel so heavily compared to Stardew? Like, on my own, I can't think any. Like, Stardew Clone has worked so well and makes it, I think, very clear, like, what I'm trying to imply, right? I always say Stardew Clone instead of ripoff because I think that, again, that gets rid of that negative connotation I don't think is always necessary, but, like, it still does point it out, right? There's not necessarily anything wrong with being a Stardew clone, but it does kind of illustrate what you're going for, and maybe that's to your benefit. Maybe that is what you want to go for. But, and it's tough because all this is, it's not like this can be measured in concrete units or whatever, right? It's muddy, the lengths or the degrees that these games are developed to be different from Stardew or not, and the different aspects and whatnot. So I don't know if I could think of a term, but certainly not Neighbourvania. Like I said, I think both parts of it don't make sense for it. So personally, like, I just stick with Stardew Clone. I wish I had someone else to bounce off or workshop a better term for that. But hey, like I said, maybe somebody else can revisit this topic, or maybe you, dear listeners, can send in some ideas for a better term than Neighbourvania. I think that would be good to hear. Get some emails in or comments, and we could discuss that further as sort of a follow up to this. Because honestly, that's I think that's roughly all I have to say in terms of response to this video. I'm gonna call it there for now. So I hope that was okay. And like I said, I think more than anything, I wish there were some other voices in this, and I'd love to hear more responses or input from other folks. So whether it comes from some of the other hosts or from listeners sending in feedback, I'd love to hear that myself. See if someone can think of a better term for a Stardew clone than the awful name that is Neighbourvania. But anyways, so that's all my thoughts on that topic, and with that, I guess I can kind of start wrapping up here. So, if you want to find me on the internet, as always, find me at CooperPrez on Twitter or at Spider Squared on Twitter to see my art account. I've been a little inconsistent with posting, but I have been posting the progress of my September Challenge stuff, so check it out on there. But more importantly, you can also find me at CooperPrez on Blue Sky. I've made the migration over there. I will likely get up an art account going on there as well. Obviously, Twitter's been just a trash fire for a long while, but I think the block fiasco going on kind of was maybe not the final in the coffin, but it was a pretty important one, and a lot of other people I followed have kind of made the jump, and it felt appropriate for me to. I'm not like I'm blocking anyone or anyone's blocking me or whatever. I don't have enough social connections for that to happen, but I will say I've enjoyed Blue Sky. It does feel like a chiller Twitter. It's a lot more relaxed. I guess that's probably also from not following as many people and whatnot, but it's not as clogged up by all these ridiculous ads and whatnot, and so much, or just being in the personal Elon trash fire, like not having to deal with that is nice. It is a breath of fresh air, I would say. So check me out at CooperPrez on the Blue Sky as well. But that's just me. And oh, how can I forget? Also, feel free to check me out at Rainbow Road Radio, the Mario themed podcast I do with our mutual friend Alex. We just did an episode on, it's Halloween, October, whatever. So of course we had to do an episode on Luigi's Mansion 2, following up from last year, right? We seeing how that went. And hey, there's a bonus voice. Our good friend Name is on that episode to discuss this game with us, and honestly, I think it was a great episode. A lot of good discussion. The game, spoilers, the game, I like it. Thumbs up. So check it out. And hey, it just came out on Switch, right? So if you're curious about it all, I highly encourage folks to go give it a listen and get an idea of what to make of the game. But yeah, that's little old me, Kevin. But if you want to find out more about this beloved podcast here, I mean, you're already listening, but if you want to follow up more of the other non-audio updates and news, follow at THS Pod on Tumblr and Twitter, to get updates as Al posts them out and whatnot. Speaking of which, Al, you can follow him at the ScottBot on Twitter or on mastodon.scott on Mastodon. So feel free to check that out. I chose Blue Sky over Mastodon because, like I said, some other folks I was interested in hopped on there, but also I still can't get over the toot thing. Like, they're really called toots on Mastodon. Is that still the case? I don't know, but I don't like it. I don't like it at all. But hey, if all that social media nonsense is too much of a whirlwind, just head on over to harvestseason.club, our direct website, so you can get links to everything I'm talking about here in this episode. There's form for feedback. Put it in there. We'll read it up on the show. Like I said, I'd love to hear other folks' thoughts on a better term for Stardew Clone. Because I don't know. I couldn't come up with one off the top of my head. But check it out there for all that good stuff. Or if you're feeling real cool, you can head on down to patreon.com/thspod to drop a couple of dollars, flash $1 or $2, and maybe Al will let you into our exclusive clubs, like the Slack, where we chat with all listeners and the hosts about the episodes and whatnot. Check that out, and you can get access to the Greenhouse, our evergreen exclusive extra show on things non-cottage core game focused. That's always fun. Huge backlog that you guys can listen to about all sorts of different topics. And they're great because they're not news focused. They're definitely always great to listen to. Go ahead, check that out. Again, harvestseason.club, patreon.com/thspod, at thspod on the Tumblr and the Twitter. Find all the news links and stuff. Thank you, dear listeners, for entertaining me for this time. All just me rambling to myself. Thank you, Al, for having me on. Granted, I don't think you actually knew I'm doing this solo at this point. So, surprise. But yeah. Until next time, dear listeners, have a good harvest.
The Harvest Season is created by Al McKinley, with support from our patrons, including our pro farmers, Kevin, Stuart, and Elisa. Our art is done by Micah the Brave, and our music is done by Nick Burgess. Feel free to visit our website, harvestseason.club, for show notes and links to things we discussed in this episode.
And tune in next week for next week's edition of The Harvest Season. Take care, everyone. Take it easy.